Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor, and this clip was going around this is from Alan Greenspan, who was the Federal Reserve Chairman. Listen to what he says.
Well, you know what's interesting is gold is still significant. I ask myself if it's a relic of a long history, why is there $1 trillion held in gold by the world's central banks plus the IMF and all of the other financial institutions? If it's worthless and meaningless, why is everybody still holding it?
Exactly. Now, this reminded me of a clip I played for you a while back. This guy's recounting as a young man when he met Paul Volcker, who was the Federal Reserve Chairman back before Alan Greenspan. Listen to what Paul Volcker said to this group of young people when he's talking about gold.
This is how he answered. He reached back into his pocket, brought out his gold coins, clinked them again, clink, 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 and said, "Until you have these, you have no eggs." I asked him, I says, "Isn't that like putting all eggs in one basket? Why should we put all of our eggs in one basket?" So you have these, you have no eggs. Now,
so this is the chicken. This is what creates all of the eggs.
Yes, those are the eggs.
And who knows more about money than central banks? And he knew that we had just gone on to this debt standard controlled by his job, the central bank.
So that's what I was almost in shock. I was like, what? Okay, you came out here and burned a $100,000 bill and said this is not for you. It's for the consumption of the goy. Now you're saying that unless you have these gold coins, you have no eggs to be even put into a basket? Yeah, I was, like I said.
And did you hear he referred to, this is one of these elites, referring to all of us as the goy. The goy, which is he's talking about how the money, all these dollars, which is nothing but trash, that's for the goy. That's for all of us peasants. The gold is for them. So make no mistake, folks, all this corruption we've witnessed and this Ripple lawsuit and all of this, these people consider us the goy. The Gary Genslers of the world consider us the goy. They do not care about what happens to retail. That's just a tagline for him. Oh, we care about retail investors. He doesn't give a rat's behind about retail investors. He's proven that pretty clearly. But since we want to go counter to, you know, they can think of us as goy, whatever that means, all they want. But guess what? Glint's my sponsor, and I'm buying gold in my Glint account, and I'm buying physical gold. So I'm trying to protect myself and my family. And with my Glint account, I can have my debit MasterCard and spend my gold as needed. And I can also have my physical gold. That's the way I'm playing it. Now look at the anniversary that we are on. 5 years ago is when Brad Garlinghouse said this. The price of XRP over 3 hours, over 3 days, over 3 weeks, or even 3 months, that is not success. That's not how I measure success. I think about success over the next 3 to 5 years. And that was Brad Garlinghouse, February 7th, 2018. Today is February 22nd, 2023. So now, did Brad Garlinghouse anticipate that the SEC would tie him up for over 2 years? I doubt it, but still, we're at that anniversary. Now, remember yesterday we had, I think it was yesterday, Stuart Alderoty comes out and makes a reference to the Supreme Court. We've had Brad Garlinghouse and Stuart Alderati reference the Hinman documents. We had Rosalind Layton come out and say it's time to reveal the Hinman documents. We had today, I'm about to show you, David Schwartz changed the banner on his Twitter profile, and but it's forming a picture. It's either people that are. It looks like Ripple is either trying to, like they're in negotiations with the SEC, or it looks like they're trying to prepare retail for a worst case scenario where a Ripple win and a retail loss. I don't know. Here's what Yassine Mubarak thinks. Pure speculation, totally guessing. 1, negotiations are at a critical phase right now. I believe that. 2, Ripple probably won usage to use XRP in ODL, which is the most important factor for their business. I think they will get that because that's accredited investors. 3, SEC probably told them they can't operate as a bank and they must license ODL exclusively through big banks. I believe that. Excuse me. Sorry. 4, Ripple is resisting and does not want any limitations on their future business plans. I believe that. 5, SEC wants XRP status to still remain murky for retail. Ripple is also resisting that. This is probably the real hinge point. If I was guessing, I'm guessing that one of Ripple's greatest fears is for retail to perceive whatever the resolution is, especially if it's a settlement, as a win for Ripple at the expense of retail. I think that if I'm Ripple, that would probably, rightly so, be one of my greatest fears. And remember, those attorneys for Ripple and for Chris Larson and Brad Garlinghouse, they represent Ripple and Chris Larson and Brad Garlinghouse. They don't represent you and me. So their interests are not necessarily aligned with mine and yours. Their job is not to save you and me, the retail holder. Their job is to save their clients. Okay? And I'm not saying, look, Brad Garlinghouse has come out and he said, and Stuart Alderati has too, and said, we will not settle without clarity for XRP now and going forward. Okay? I don't think that these guys would sell retail up the river to save their own butts. I don't think they would. But that's what this feels like, is that they're at least setting the stage for just in case. I don't know. I'm just speculating like everybody. And there's Jung Link was speculating in that video there if you want to go watch that. So here's David Schwartz's banner. Ripple. When a scrappy financial startup takes on a web of corruption and betrayal to bring instant payments to the masses, they learn that the cost of disrupting the status quo is higher than they could have ever imagined, forcing them to decide between their vision and their survival. All right? And then he replies to, this is Reinhard Kate that does the, he does the content for Ripple. Okay, the Ripple drops and the videos and all that. And then David Schwartz, and he's talking here, Reinhard Kate's talking about how apparently he submits to stories, I guess, to the blacklist or something like that. He's a writer. And David Schwartz replies to him and says, oh, this looks like fun, let me try. And he shows what he wrote. I'm assuming he wrote. Then XRP Darren, I think, is right over the target. He says, the vision versus survival. Escrow, and I think that it's always been about the escrow, folks. And that brings us to something else. Do you remember? Well, first of all, I want to show John Deaton's reply. John Deaton says, sounds like someone who's read the Hinman emails and drafts as well as other unredacted evidence to me. He's referring to David Schwartz. Now, when XRP Darren brought up the escrow, I was immediately reminded of this. Because I think that this is all about the escrow and the government wanting to get their dirty hands on the escrow so that before this whole thing goes off. That's what I think. Stellar, remember when, this is from November 5th, 2019. I'll never forget it because I was at Swell in Singapore 2019 when this news came out, okay? Stellar burns over 55 billion tokens worth 4.7 billion USD. I remember seeing this, and I remember wondering if this had anything to do with the SEC. In other words, I wondered if they burned this because the SEC said, look, we're coming after you if you don't burn half your supply. Okay, because you're in essence holding half of the supply. Now, this was where David Schwartz got into it with Jed McCaleb. He says, too bad XRP is decentralized, or someone could just burn half the supply and raise the price to 29 cents. Jed McCaleb, who doesn't comment on Twitter much, got into it with him. What the F are you talking about? Ripple Labs can burn half the XRP supply. Thanks, I'll keep that in mind if we ever find nothing we're doing is working. Jed McCaleb, such a petty crabs in a bucket thing to say. Harsh but fair. Anyway, this is a very rare instance where they got into it. But I remember seeing this and wondering if this is what this was about, the SEC, and if by Ripple, maybe, I don't know, maybe Ripple told them to pound sand, told the SEC to pound sand. No, we're not getting rid of half of our. Maybe that's why they eventually went after him. I don't know. But what's interesting is that in the same, at the same right, well, first of all, let me point this out. What else was interesting is, why would you drop this news right here in the middle of Swell 2019? Is it possible that the SEC said, look, here, we'll agree to that. You burn half your supply and we won't come after you. But we also want you to drop the news right in the middle of Ripple's Swell to send them a message. That's another thing I thought about, okay? All right, so now, right in the middle of all this drama right now going on with the SEC, Jed McCaleb does a very rare tweet. And if you remember, for probably over 2 years, it started as my theory, but I've been saying that I thought that all of this was about what PayPal started, trying to create an intergalactic currency. PayPal Galactic was announced back in 2013, right around the time that Ripple and Stellar were created, and we never heard about it again. We've shown you how a lot of the PayPal founders invested in both OpenCoin, which was before it was called Ripple, and they invested in Stripe, which Stripe was the first investor in Stellar. Well, I've always thought that these satellites, Starlink satellites, and all of this stuff was tied together. I've shown you Stellar's website and how it's got the space theme, and we've shown the video where Ripple has got an astronaut in outer space that's sending money to a wedding out in the middle of India or something. And I've always asked the question, how would that money get from outer space unless they're using satellites, nodes on satellites? So yesterday, in the midst of all this drama, Jed McCaleb has left Stellar, and now he's with Vast, which is a space exploration company. He says, this is a major step for Vast. This year is going to be wild for us. Welcome launcher team. Time to accelerate and scale. We are excited to announce that Vast has acquired Launcher Vast Space. And then then CNBC covered it. Space station company Vast, founded by billionaire Jed McCaleb, acquires startup Launcher. And then in the course of my going through, I was looking at Stellar and seeing what was going on. I found something that I thought was interesting. Remember in 2015 when Katie Haun, who eventually ended up, remember, you can't forget Katie Haun. Katie Haun has not had enough focus in all of this drama, because you have to understand, Katie Haun was the U.S. attorney who signed the agreement with Ripple in 2015. Here's her name. This is the woman who signed the deal, which basically declared XRP to be a virtual currency with FinCEN, which is a subsidiary of the U.S. Treasury, okay? Same woman is sitting front row on January 24th, 2018, when Jay Clayton is at Stanford University on stage with, what was the guy's name? Not Rehnquist. The the guy who used to be an SEC commissioner. I'll think of his name in a minute. Grunfest. So she's sitting in the audience, asks Jay Clayton a question. At the time, I think she was on Coinbase's board. The very next morning, it doesn't say if she's with him, but the very next morning, Jay Clayton goes over to Andreessen Horowitz, meets with Chris Dixon, and he puts Chris Dixon in charge of what eventually becomes the Ethereum Free Pass. Katie Haun will later go to Andreessen Horowitz, who helped Andreessen Horowitz, that was the lead firm in helping to get the Ethereum Free Pass. And I have to believe as a reward, she eventually makes her way to Andreessen Horowitz, as does Bill Hinman. You have to understand all of that to understand this. She happens to have signed off on, as Assistant U.S. Attorney on the FinCEN agreement with Ripple. And then I just happened to bump into this morning. So here's the agreement with Ripple from 2015. There's Katie Haun. This is Katie Haun's LinkedIn profile. So you see she was at the San Francisco Bay Area Assistant U.S. Attorney and Digital Currency Coordinator. This is when she was doing the Ripple settlement in this time frame, September 2006 to May 2017. Well, I just happened to bump into this. Candace Kelly is the general counsel at Stellar, and she also was in San Francisco during the same time. She was Chief Special Prosecutions at the United States Attorney's Office. And I asked the question here, was the general counsel for Stellar working with Katie Haun at that time? Because she was there in San Francisco, and I think these are the same offices. I think that's where it's in the same offices. That could be, it may not be, maybe nothing, but it could be a lot of something. I'm the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe, hit the like button, tell your friends and family that the appearance here is that Katie Haun and the Stellar general counsel were at these offices at the same time during the time when Ripple was gone after of this 2015 FinCEN, which became a settlement agreement.